You can find someone to take over, that's fine.
You tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Your undergrad has some.
All right. So this will be this is the software I have installed here. Repetier host. Here, for example, is where you import the STL files, and then you can prepare the files which are ready to print. And the format for those files is G-code file. So essentially, what comes in, it's an STL file. What comes out is a G-code file, and that's for the printing file. So here, for example, we have different tabs: object placement, slicer, print preview, manual control, SD card. So here in object placement, this is where we can add the STL file. I have saved some STL files under selling 3D models STL files. So for example, here we have an aortic valve, let's blood vessel, just a cubic structure, human ear, human nose, etc. Let's start with a cube just to show you how. So here you import the STL file. What you see here, this rectangle, is exactly the rectangle of the print bed of your printer. This is exactly the size for it to fit in the wall plate, essentially the same shape. So as long as when you import the STL file, you will always place it in the center. You can always move it by clicking here and move in the arrows, or just have it in the center, and then you can recenter every time. Even if you move it here, you can use this tab or this for recentering. You can also, for example, scale the object. So here is, let's say, make it 2 in the XYZ, or reset the scale. You can also, for example, just copy the object, and it will just place them it's equal spaces to each other.
Is there a way to make it so that the area shown there is for like a petri dish?
It's for a petri dish?
Yeah, like say I wanted to print on a petri dish instead of in a well plate. Does it matter? Is there a way to set like the dimensions of a 100mm petri dish?
Let's see, on the printer settings, let's see, printer shape. Let's see, classic printers, circular print shape, printable radius 50, printable height 70. That will be the one then.
Okay.
Yes. Let's see, where is it? There we go. Yeah, so that will be the. So you can just go here to print settings, into printer shape, and then select the printer if you want to have it like this, or you can just go back to the classic printer, and it will be the same thing. Let's see, I don't know why I don't have the turning option yet. I don't know why this mouse doesn't let me turn it. Do you guys know? There we go. There we go. That's the one. Okay. So let's see this one. To recenter. So you want the circular, right?
Yeah, I was just curious if there was a way to change it. It doesn't matter for now.
Okay. Alright, so once you place the object, you have a few options. I told you to rescale it, turn it, and so on. Let's see. So yeah, you can play a little with that. For the slicer, the next thing is selecting the slicer settings that you, and the slicing settings is basically what type of architecture you want the 3D model to have. So for example, here you have predefined print settings. For example, diagonal square will give you, when you click slicer, it will give you this type of structure. If you can select other type of slicers. So for example, the hexagonal will give you that type of structure, and just like that, you know, you have different predefined settings that you can choose. And all of that, it will basically apply those settings which are predefined in this print settings. You can always go back to go to configuration if in case you want to add new print settings or if you want to reconfigure them. And this will open up slicer, and here you have the same access to all of the settings, and you can change, for example, the layer height and perimeter, the layer height, the number of perimeters. You can also change, for example, the infill, what will be your infill pattern. So for example, here we have for the diagonal square, we have the rectilinear with 45 degree angle. If you select here for example, if you select the upright square lattice, that one has a 9 or 0 degree angle. For example, we select the upright square lattice, it has the same rectilinear but zero angle.
What does that angle do?
That one is that angle. It's this. So for example, this is a 0 angle, and if I select this diagonal, it will just change the angle of the lines.
Oh, okay.
So now it's 45 degree angle. You can set that to any size.
Okay.
It's just that for now we just have those files, those settings. Another one which is quite interesting is, for example, the organ skin. That this print setting, what it lets you do is that when you go into multiple extruders, here you can see what it's doing. The perimeter will be printed with printed 1, and the infill will be printed with printed 2. So for example, if I select it here, organ skin, possible first layer height can be greater than also diameter. Yes, that's right. Organ skin, we have a layer height of 0.4 and 0. Okay, that was a problem. So you see here the nozzle diameter is 0.3, and here my layer height is 0.4. This is a typical problem. Your nozzle diameter cannot be greater than your nozzle. Your layer height cannot be greater than your nozzle diameter. That's a rule, and you will get that message. That's an error. So here, for example, here you see the different colors.
Yeah.
If you look into going to extruder, you will see that extruder 1 is blue and extruder 2 is red. So that means that extruder 1 will print the perimeter, and extruder 2 will print the inside, the infill.
Is this the same file that you just were working with?
Yeah, it's the same.
New file?
Exactly the same file.
So how did you switch? How did it know to
Just
print
here.
one object with?
I just selected a different print setting. So for example, if I go back to hexagonal lattice high, select slicer, it will go back to another print setting.
Okay.
Only using one printhead.
Okay.
If I go to organ skin, the organ skin will print with dual printheads. And the way you can know is just by going into slicer, configuration, and here, for example, if I go to organ skin, I go to multiple extruders, here will tell me which one is, printhead 1 is perimeter, printhead 2 is infill. If I change the setting to another print setting, everything is printed with printhead 1. And of course you can always just select, change it. So in any of these files you can change. It's just that when you make changes, they will not do what they're supposed to do unless you save it as a new file. So for your understanding, you know what I mean? Yeah. Because if you make changes, of course you can make changes, but then you need to keep track of. You can always go back here to all of these settings to understand what each print setting is, how it's configured. So the most common problem is that you, for example, change something here, and then you try to print something, and then you're like, wait, I'm using the right print setting, but then you don't remember that you changed something in that setting. Yeah. So it's always good that when
we need to make a new
when
file.
you make changes, just make a new setting. So for example, if I made changes here to this setting, let's say I want to print perimeter with printhead 2 and infill printhead 1. So when I save it here, I just select and just add dual printhead, just so that I can keep track here that I have a new setting. So now this one is printed with dual printhead.
Okay, so say we want to design our own file, and we want one printhead to print something that isn't just an infill on a border. Is there a way to do that in SolidWorks?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can either do that in SolidWorks. So for example, you can make an assembly of, let's say you want to print, you have one file, and then inside that file you have another structure, let's say a vascular structure. As long as you save them as two different files, you can always import them here. File 1 will be printed with printed 1, and file 2 will be printed with printed 2.
Okay. Is there a way to do that in the manual?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So otherwise, let's say here, let me just clear this. Let's say I want to import this cube.
Sorry, I'm not catching this on camera. How are you importing these files right now?
Oh, here.
Doing like what we did before?
Yeah, so object placement.
Okay.
And then here, import add object.
Okay.
And then here you have the files, STL files. I have created a folder in Selling 3D models, STL files, so you can just select one of them.
Okay.
And so for example, here we have one file, and then if I import another one, I can say this one is will be printed with printhead 2.
Okay, gotcha, cool.
So here you can select which printhead is gonna print which model,
Okay.
and I can even put them right next to each other. So for example, if I go here into move object, I can select that let's see, I can select that object, center it, select the other object, center it, and then let's see,
So you can print them on top of each other?
Exactly, so I just want to put them on top of each other. Let's see, center first thing. Center. So center both of them, and then just offset one of them. So now you have print will be printed 1 and printed 2.
Cool.
Yeah, and then when you slice it, you can select, let's say, regular one. At least one is slicing. Yes, that's fine. This one always has a printable area for slicing. No. So now here. So this is the slice file. So here, for example, we can show every single layer of the complete code. So, you know, as we go through each layer, it will be printhead 1 and then printhead 2.
How'd you do that? Sorry.
Here in show single layer, you can show
This is under
print preview.
print preview.
Well, after
Show single layer, okay.
you slice, it will show you. It will give you these
Okay.
options.
Okay.
So you can show the complete layer, show single layers. So show single layers or
Okay.
show arrange.
Okay. Okay, so you can slice.
Exactly,
through
so
it.
that
Okay,
you can
cool.
analyze how the
Okay.
file looks. And it also gives you the print statistics. It will take 3 minutes and 41 seconds to print. It's a 20 layer model,
Okay.
and you know things like that. So
Is there a scale bar on there?
on this
how
one,
do you know how big each line is?
each one of these squares is 10 millimeters.
Okay. How do you know the diameter of each of these individual lines? That's up to your
That's up to
settings and.
Yeah, exactly. So if I go to slicer, set configuration, here we were playing with the, here for example, print setting. Then also diameter is set to 0.3. So that's how you.
So what if you go to 0.1? I just want to see how it changes the.
In that case, then also diameter is 0.1. So when you go to print setting, your layer height must also be 0.1. Otherwise, it will not work.
Okay.
Now, Hector, I have
Yes.
a question. Do we have any live observation of the printing?
Oh, so just change it for the bottom one.
Exactly.
Right.
Let's see. Give me 1 sec.
It looks like it got much closer together.
Show single layer. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Slicer.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Let's see. Ba, 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 let's see. 11 minutes. Yeah, change. Extruder one.
You need to re-slice it when you changed it.
Yeah, I think
Probably.
so, but let's see. Filament. I don't know why it's only doing it for the first one, no. Object placement. And it's extremely tight, so
Yeah, I think that's okay.
configuration infill. Let's see. High. Let's go back to another thing that could be will be useful, like whenever you stack them, you can also, let's see, where is extraction analysis? No, maybe that's not here. In slicer, you can also select if you want to apply a specific, let me do it here. In slicer, if you want to apply a very specific, let's say you have two files mounted on each other and you want to apply a very specific print setting on each one of them, then you can just open up slicer as well. Let's So here, for example, if let's say you want to apply that print setting, but then you can also double click on it and then modify this, for example, the print settings, and just, for example, here, let's say infill density, and then instead of applying 20%, let's see, just so you have an idea, the infill here as a 40%. So you can just rewrite that and say, no, actually I want the print setting to be 80%. Okay. Then when you slice it, it will override that information.
So it just prints more lines, basically.
It just prints more lines.
It makes
exactly.
it more dense. Okay.
Exactly. Otherwise, if I delete that,
It goes to the default.
it goes to the default.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can make very specific changes to it, and that applies to all of the print settings here. Any of the print settings, you can just, if you only want to change one thing, then you just double click and select the print setting that you want. But otherwise, you have access to Slicer when you open up Repetier Host. You have access to the same settings. So for example, now we wanted to print something more interesting. Let's say aortic valve. So that's the aortic valve. It's not manifold. Okay. So let's say we want to apply one of the slicer settings. Let's say this one, the upright square lattice. Of course, it takes more time whenever it's slicing something more complicated.
Can you call Bobby? Just see if he has anything to say. If he can help us.
What kind of tissues would you like to print, Andrew?
Not sure right now. He's working mostly with vasculature. I might be working with neurons.
Mm-hmm.
So I might print something like in the shape of a hippocampus, for example. But ideally, we'd like to print more than one tissue type. Or even perfuse some channels we left in the first print with another cell type.
Okay.
Like for example, if I printed neural tissue and then I wanted to leave a gap for a blood vessel to do blood-brain barrier or something.
Okay. All right.
Then we wouldn't need to print two cells. We would just need to print one cell and then add the other one later on.
Yeah, exactly. And the shit that you want to print, is it basically like just a film, or something more 3D as well?
Not sure yet. Probably more 3D if we can. I mean, there's obviously a limit to how big we can go.
Yeah. Which type of birings are you planning to use?